6 months later, the White House East Room was filled with people. Journalists, politicians, activists, and community leaders sat in rows of chairs facing a small stage. At the front of the room stood a wooden desk with several pens arranged neatly on top. President Michael Montgomery entered the room to applause. Everyone stood as he walked toward the desk. But it wasn't the president who caught everyone's attention. It was the man walking beside him. Robert Montgomery looked like a different person from the homeless man who had been attacked in the park. His hair was neatly cut, his face clean-shaven. He wore a well-fitted dark blue suit. The physical signs of his attack had healed, though he still walked with a slight limp. More importantly, there was pride in his eyes now, a sense of purpose that had been missing for many years. Father and son stood side by side at the desk. Behind them were large posters showing the main points of the Robert Montgomery Act. The bill had passed through Congress after months of debate, compromise, and hard work. Today marks a new beginning, President Montgomery said to the crowd. The Robert Montgomery Act will provide $10 billion for homeless services. It will fund mental health treatment for those who need it most. It will require new training for police officers across our nation, and it will create stronger accountability when those officers abuse their power. He turned to his father. None of this would have happened without the courage of one man. My father lived on the streets for 15 years. He saw firsthand the failures of our system. His experience, painful as it was, has become the foundation for change. Robert stepped forward to the microphone. He looked nervous but determined. "Thank you," he said simply. "I never wanted to be known this way. For years, I hid my identity because I was ashamed. But now, I understand that my story matters because it could have been anyone's story. Homelessness can happen to anyone. Police brutality can happen to anyone. The difference is that most victims don't have a son in the White House." The crowd listened in silence as Robert continued. "This law isn't really about me. It's about the thousands of people still living on the streets. It's about seeing them as human beings with value. It's about second chances. I got mine. Everyone deserves the same opportunity." President Montgomery picked up one of the pens from the desk. "It is my honor to sign the Robert Montgomery Act into law." He sat down and signed his name on the official document. Then he stood and handed the pen to his father. They embraced as cameras flashed throughout the room. Among the guests in the audience was a face few expected to see. James Wilson, the former police officer who had attacked Robert, sat quietly in the back row. He had been released from prison early, partly due to Robert's surprising request for leniency. After serving 6 months of his 3-year sentence, Wilson had accepted Robert's invitation to join the new Police Reform Commission created by the Act. As someone who had crossed the line, Wilson offered valuable perspective on how power could corrupt and how better training might prevent future incidents. After the ceremony, Robert made his way through the crowd to where Wilson waited. "Thank you for coming," Robert said, extending his hand. Wilson shook it, his face serious. "Thank you for the second chance. I didn't deserve it." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Robert replied. "I got mine. Now it's your turn to make it count." Later that evening, father and son sat in the private quarters of the White House. It had become Robert's home too, though he often traveled the country now, speaking about homelessness and police reform. "Did you ever imagine this?" Michael asked, looking out the window at the Washington Monument lit up in the distance, "when you were sleeping on that park bench in Riverdale?" Robert shook his head. "Never. I thought my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer." "And now you're changing the country," Michael said with pride. "We're changing it together," Robert corrected him. Father and son. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, appreciating how far they had come. The painful past had not disappeared. Robert still battled with the shame of those lost years. Michael still felt guilt for not finding his father sooner. "Tomorrow I'm meeting with the housing secretary about the new shelter program," Robert said. "Then I have lunch with some former homeless veterans who want to help with outreach." Michael smiled. "You have a busier schedule than I do these days." Never too late to start a new career, Robert joked. From homeless man to presidential advisor. Only in America. Father and son laughed together, the sound echoing through the historic rooms of the White House, a house that had seen many families, many stories, but perhaps none quite like theirs. Robert Montgomery had not always lived on the streets. Once, he had a beautiful home, a good job as an engineer, and a family who loved him. But that was many years ago, before his world fell apart. The old man slowly folded his thin blanket as the angry police officer watched. Robert tried to move faster, but his fingers were stiff from sleeping in the cold. He knew better than to argue with police. In his 3 years on the streets, he had learned that lesson well. "I said hurry up," Officer Wilson snapped. Robert looked up at the young officer. He saw anger in the man's eyes, the kind of anger that comes from personal pain. Robert recognized it because he had once carried that same anger. "Yes, sir," Robert said politely. "Almost done." As he gathered his few belongings, Robert thought about his son, Michael. It had been 15 years since they last spoke. 15 years since that terrible fight when Michael had tried to help him after his wife died. But Robert had been too proud, too deep in his grief and alcohol to accept help. He had said awful things to his only child that night. The next morning, Robert had left their home, ashamed of what he had become. He never contacted Michael again, even as his son's political career took him all the way to the White House. Robert watched his son's success from afar, from newspaper headlines and television screens in store windows. He was proud but felt he had no right to be part of Michael's life anymore. No one in Riverdale knew who Robert really was. To them, he was just another homeless old man. He kept his true identity secret, too embarrassed to admit that the President of the United States was his son. What kind of father ends up sleeping on park benches while his son leads the country? "What's taking so long?" Officer Wilson asked, his voice getting louder. "Sorry, officer, my hands don't work as well as they used to," Robert explained. He stood up slowly, his back aching from the hard bench. At 68, Robert's body reminded him daily of his hard life. He picked up his small bag containing everything he owned. A change of clothes, a toothbrush, an old photo of his wife and son, and a book Michael had given him years ago. "Where should I go?" Robert asked, not expecting a helpful answer. "Not my problem," Officer Wilson said. "Just not here." Robert nodded and began walking away. He would try the church on Maple Street. Sometimes they let people rest in the basement during the day. "And don't come back," the officer called after him. "Next time, I won't ask nicely." Robert turned around. Something about the officer's tone bothered him. He had dealt with many police officers over the years, some kind, some rough, but this one seemed different, more dangerous. "I understand you're doing your job," Robert said calmly, "but we're all human beings." It was the wrong thing to say. Officer Wilson's face turned red. "You think you can lecture me?" he shouted, moving closer to Robert. People walking by started to look their way. A young woman with a dog stopped and pulled out her phone. Robert raised his hands. "No, sir. I'm leaving now." But Officer Wilson was already reaching into his pocket. Robert saw something metallic flash in the morning sun. Steel knuckles. Robert had seen them before, in his younger days. He knew how much damage they could do. Fear shot through him as he backed away. "Please," he said. "There's no need for that." For a moment, Robert thought about telling the officer who he was, who his son was. Maybe that would stop this. But before he could speak, he saw the officer's arm pull back. In that split second before the blow came, Robert thought of his son. He wondered if Michael would ever know what happened to his father. He wondered if he would ever get the chance to say he was sorry. Then Officer Wilson's fist, covered in steel, came crashing toward his face. The steel knuckles hit Robert's face with terrible force. There was a loud crack as the metal connected with his jaw. Pain exploded through his head like lightning. His world spun, then went dark. Robert fell backward onto the ground. His old body hit the concrete path hard. His small bag of belongings spilled open. The photo of his wife and son landed face up next to him. Though no one noticed it, blood began to pool under his head, bright red against the pale concrete. Officer Wilson stood over him, breathing hard. For a moment, he seemed shocked by what he had done. The steel knuckles had done more damage than he expected. He quickly pulled them off and looked around. People in the park had stopped walking. They stared at the scene with horror on their faces. A young woman with a small dog had her phone pointed at Officer Wilson. She was recording everything. "He attacked me," Officer Wilson said loudly, trying to sound sure of himself. "He came at me. I had to defend myself." But his words sounded hollow in the quiet park. No one spoke. The only sound was the woman's dog, barking at the officer. "Stop recording," Officer Wilson shouted at the woman. "That's an order." "No," she answered, her voice shaking but strong. "Everyone saw what happened. He didn't attack you." Other people had their phones out now too. Officer Wilson realized he was in trouble. He reached for his radio to call for backup. "Officer needs assistance at Riverdale Park," he said quickly. Homeless man became violent. "Situation is under control." While waiting for other officers, Wilson looked down at Robert. The old man wasn't moving. Blood was still coming from his head wound and from his mouth. Wilson felt sick. He had hit people before when needed, but never like this. Never with such anger. Never with a weapon that wasn't allowed. A man from the crowd stepped forward. "I'm a doctor," he said. "Let me help him." Officer Wilson moved aside as the doctor checked Robert. "He needs an ambulance now," the doctor said. "His pulse is weak." The sound of sirens filled the air as police cars and an ambulance raced toward the park. Officer Wilson walked a few steps away. When no one was looking, he dropped the steel knuckles into a trash can and covered them with paper. Paramedics arrived and quickly went to work on Robert. They carefully put a neck brace on him and lifted him onto a stretcher. One paramedic shook his head at how bad Robert's injuries looked. "What happened here?" asked Sergeant Davis, the first police officer to arrive. "The homeless man became aggressive," Officer Wilson said. "I had to use force to control them." The young woman with the phone stepped forward. "That's not true," she said. "I have it all on video." The officer hit him with something metal on his hand. The homeless man wasn't doing anything wrong. Sergeant Davis looked at Officer Wilson with concern. "Is this true, Wilson? Did you use a weapon?" "Of course not," Wilson lied. "She's mistaken." But more people from the crowd spoke up. "We all saw it," an older man said. "He had metal knuckles." As the paramedics loaded Robert into the ambulance, a small notebook fell from his pocket. A young paramedic picked it up and opened it, looking for ID. His eyes went wide as he read the first page. "Sir," he called to Sergeant Davis, "you need to see this." The paramedic handed over the notebook. Inside was Robert's full name, and in case of emergency, a contact. "Michael Montgomery, my son." Sergeant Davis looked confused. "Montgomery. Like the president?" The paramedic nodded slowly. "The address listed is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's the White House." Everyone fell silent as they realized what this meant. Officer Wilson felt his legs go weak. The homeless man he had just attacked with steel knuckles was the father of the President of the United States. The ambulance doors closed, and it sped away toward Riverdale General Hospital, sirens blaring. Robert Montgomery's life hung in the balance as his secret identity was about to become national news. The intensive care unit at Riverdale General Hospital was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines. President Michael Montgomery stood outside the door to his father's room. Two Secret Service agents waited a respectful distance away. "He's heavily sedated," Dr. Pottle explained gently. "He won't wake up for some time. We need to keep him calm and still so his brain can heal." Michael nodded, taking a deep breath. "I understand." "The surgery went as well as could be expected," Dr. Pottle continued. We removed the blood clot and reduced the pressure on his brain. The next 24 hours will tell us more." Michael pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was dim, with only the glow of monitors lighting the space. And there, in the hospital bed, was his father. Robert Montgomery looked small and frail under the white hospital sheets. His face was badly bruised, with bandages covering much of his head. Tubes and wires connected him to various machines. His breathing was shallow but steady. Michael moved closer, his heart pounding. His father looked so different from the strong man in his memories. Robert's face was weathered, his skin leathery from years in the sun. His hair, once dark like Michael's, was now completely white. Deep lines marked his face, telling the story of a hard life on the streets. Carefully, Michael pulled a chair next to the bed and sat down. He reached out and touched his father's hand. The skin felt rough and cold. "Dad," he whispered, "it's Michael. I'm here now." There was no response, just the continuing beep of the heart monitor. Michael didn't know what he had expected. A miracle awakening. Some sign that his father knew he was there. But Robert remained still, lost in a drug-induced sleep that was keeping him alive. Michael sat there, holding his father's hand, watching his chest rise and fall with each breath. 15 years of anger, hurt, and questions filled his mind. Why had his father left? Why had he chosen to live on the streets rather than reach out? Why had he kept his identity secret, even in the same town where his son was now president? A nurse entered quietly to check the monitors and adjust Robert's IV. She worked efficiently, then paused by the door. "He came into the emergency room a few times over the years," she said. "Nothing serious, mostly when the winter was too cold. He never told anyone who he was, always polite, always left as soon as he could." "Did he ever mention family?" Michael asked. The nurse shook her head. "No, but he kept to himself. Most of them do." After she left, Michael leaned closer to his father. "Why, Dad?" he whispered. "We could have fixed things. You didn't have to disappear." Outside the hospital, news crews had gathered in even greater numbers. The story had broken nationally. President's homeless father attacked by police officer. Inside the hospital, Michael's staff worked frantically, trying to manage the political crisis while giving the president space with his father. Sarah entered the room quietly, holding a tablet. "Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are some things that need your attention." Michael nodded, not taking his eyes off his father. "What's the situation?" "The officer who attacked your father has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon and excessive force. His body cam was conveniently turned off during the incident, but multiple witnesses and videos confirm what happened. The mayor of Riverdale is holding a press conference in an hour, distancing himself from the police department's actions." Michael frowned. "The same mayor who ordered the police to clear homeless people from the park?" "Yes, sir," Sarah confirmed. "There are also calls coming in from Congress. They want to know if you'll be returning to Washington tonight." "I'm not leaving," Michael said firmly. "Not until I know he's going to be okay." Sarah nodded. "I'll let them know. The doctors say your father may regain consciousness tomorrow if all goes well." After Sarah left, Michael continued his vigil beside the bed. He thought about all the times his father had sat by his bedside when he was sick as a child. How the roles had reversed. "I found you, Dad," Michael whispered, tears filling his eyes. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." As night fell over Riverdale, the President of the United States remained in the chair beside his father's hospital bed, still holding the weathered hand that had once taught him how to tie his shoes, how to throw a ball, how to be a man. Outside, the nation watched and waited. Inside, there was just a son and his father, trying to bridge 15 years of silence. The presidential helicopter, Marine One, flew fast through the clear blue sky. Inside, President Michael Montgomery sat alone with his thoughts. Secret Service agents kept their distance. Understanding this was a deeply personal moment for him. Michael looked out the window at the land passing below. Farms, towns, and highways rushed by. He had made this journey many times as a child, riding in his father's old station wagon from Washington, D.C. to visit grandparents in Riverdale. Now he was making the same trip as President of the United States, racing to see his father who might be dying. "Mr. President," said Agent Jackson, "we'll land in 10 minutes. The hospital has cleared the roof for us." Michael nodded without speaking. His mind was filled with memories of his father. Robert Montgomery had been a good father for most of Michael's life. He taught Michael to fish, helped him with homework, and supported his dreams. Everything changed after Michael's mother died of cancer. Robert couldn't handle the pain and turned to alcohol. The strong, confident engineer became a shadow of himself. The helicopter began to descend toward Riverdale General Hospital. Michael could see police cars surrounding the building. News vans were already gathering outside. The secret was getting out. "Sir," Agent Jackson said, "the hospital director reports your father is in surgery now. The doctors are trying to reduce pressure on his brain from the injury." Michael closed his eyes. Brain surgery. It sounded so serious, so final. He should have tried harder to find his father all these years. He should have done more. The helicopter landed with a gentle bump. Hospital staff waited with the door open. Michael stepped out, ducking under the still spinning blades. The wind blew his suit jacket and tie. Inside the hospital, everything was quiet. The hallways had been cleared. A nervous-looking doctor in a white coat approached. "Mr. President," the doctor said, "I'm Dr. Patel, Chief of Surgery. Your father is still in the operating room. The next few hours are critical. Will he survive?" Michael asked directly. Dr. Patel didn't sugarcoat it. "We don't know yet. The blow to his head caused significant trauma. There's bleeding in his brain that we're trying to control. His age and," the doctor paused, "his general condition make things more complicated." "His general condition," Michael repeated. "You mean the fact that he's been homeless, malnourished, probably hasn't seen a doctor in years?" "Yes, sir," Dr. Patel admitted. "His body shows signs of long-term neglect, but we're doing everything possible." Michael was led to a private waiting room. His staff had already set up a temporary office where he could continue working while waiting for news. But Michael couldn't focus on work. Not now. "What about the police officer?" he asked Sarah, who had arrived ahead of him. "The one who did this." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "His name is James Wilson, 34 years old, 7 years on the force. He claims your father became aggressive, but multiple witnesses say that's not true. Video evidence shows him striking your father with what appears to be steel knuckles, which are illegal in this state. Where is he now?" "In custody. The local police arrested him after they realized who your father was." Michael frowned. "Would they have arrested him if my father was just another homeless man?" Sarah had no answer for that. A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse entered, carrying a plastic bag. "Mr. President, these are your father's belongings. We thought you might want to see them." Michael took the bag with shaking hands. Inside was so little: worn clothes, a toothbrush, a tattered paperback book, and a small leather wallet. Michael opened the wallet and found it nearly empty except for one photo. It was the same family photo Michael kept in his desk, himself as a teenager with both his parents. His father had carried this photo all these years. Through whatever hardships, whatever shame or pain had kept him away, Robert Montgomery had kept this reminder of happier times. "He never forgot us," Michael whispered. The room fell silent. Then a phone rang, breaking the quiet. Dr. Patel's voice came over the speaker. "Mr. President, your father is out of surgery. He's stable for now. If you'd like to see him, you can come to the ITU." Michael stood up, still holding the photo. It was time to see his father face to face after 15 long years. 1 week passed since Robert Montgomery woke up in the hospital. His condition improved each day. The swelling in his brain went down. The bruises on his face changed from dark purple to yellowish green. He could sit up in bed and have longer conversations before getting tired. President Michael Montgomery surprised everyone by staying in Riverdale. He turned a conference room at the hospital into his temporary office. From there, he ran the country, had video meetings with world leaders, and signed important papers. But every few hours, he would walk down the hall to sit with his father. The nation watched this story with great interest. News reporters camped outside the hospital day and night. People sent thousands of cards and letters. Some shared stories about their own homeless family members. Others told of police officers who had hurt them. The incident had opened up important conversations across America. On this morning, Michael entered his father's room with a newspaper. Robert was sitting up, looking stronger than the day before. "Good morning, Dad," Michael said. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Robert replied. "The headaches are less painful. Doctor says I might move to a regular room tomorrow." Michael smiled. "That's great news." He put the newspaper on the bed. "Have you seen today's headline?" Robert picked up the paper. The front page showed a picture of Officer James Wilson in handcuffs, being led into the courthouse. The headline read, "Officer who attacked President's father faces federal civil rights charges." "They're really going after him," Robert said quietly. "He nearly killed you, Dad." Robert nodded slowly. "I know. But I keep thinking about how many times this happens to people who don't have sons in the White House." Michael sat down in the chair beside the bed. "I've been thinking about that too. A lot, actually." He took a deep breath. "I'm working on something big, Dad. New legislation. I'm calling it the Robert Montgomery Act." "What? Named after me?" Robert looked surprised. "Yes. It would create new programs to help homeless people, fund mental health services, and require major changes in police training and accountability." Robert stared at his son. "You're using what happened to me to change things." "If you're comfortable with it, yes," Michael said. "Your story has touched millions of people. It's shown them that homelessness can happen to anyone, that the father of a president can end up on the streets, that police brutality is real and happens every day." Robert was quiet for a moment, thinking. "What about Officer Wilson, the man who hit me?" "He'll go to prison," Michael said. "The evidence is clear. Multiple witnesses, videos. Plus, they found the steel knuckles in the trash can where he tried to hide them." "I want to meet him," Robert said suddenly. Michael looked shocked. "The man who attacked you. Why?" "I've been thinking about him. He was so angry that day. Reminded me of myself, after your mother died." Robert paused. "Anger like that comes from pain. I'd like to understand his story." "Dad, that's very generous of you, but he seriously hurt you." "I know, and he should face consequences," Robert agreed. "But hate doesn't heal hate. I learned it the hard way." Michael studied his father with new respect. After everything Robert had been through, he still had compassion. It was remarkable. "I'll see what I can arrange," Michael promised. "But first you need to get stronger." Later that day, Michael held a press conference in the hospital lobby. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing as he stepped up to the microphones. "My father's attack has revealed two national emergencies that we cannot ignore anymore," Michael began. "A homelessness crisis that leaves too many Americans without shelter or hope, and a policing system that too often uses excessive force against our most vulnerable citizens." He outlined his plan for the Robert Montgomery Act. As he spoke, his staff distributed fact sheets about homelessness in America and police violence statistics. "This is not a Democratic or Republican issue," Michael continued. "This is about human dignity, about justice, about who we are as a nation." In his hospital room, Robert watched his son on television. Tears filled his eyes as he listened to Michael speak with passion about changes that could help millions of people. For 15 years, Robert had lived in shame, believing he had nothing to offer. Now somehow his greatest humiliation was becoming something powerful, something that might help others. For the first time in many years, Robert Montgomery felt a sense of purpose. His fall from grace had been painful, but perhaps it had happened for a reason. Perhaps his journey from engineer to homeless man to hospital patient had prepared him for this moment, to be a bridge between worlds that rarely understood each other. President Michael Montgomery sat at the large desk in the Oval Office. Important papers covered the surface. He was in a meeting with 5 people who worked for him. They were talking about a new law that would help poor people get better health care. "Mr. President," said his chief advisor, Sarah Chen, "these numbers show that the new plan will help millions of Americans." Michael nodded, studying the papers. At 48 years old, he was known as a president who cared about details. People respected him because he worked hard and tried to understand problems before making decisions. A knock at the door made everyone look up. Michael's secretary, Tom, entered the room. His face looked worried. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. President," Tom said, "but there's an urgent call from Riverdale. The police chief there needs to speak with you immediately." Michael frowned. Riverdale was his hometown, where he had grown up. He hadn't been back there in years. What could be so urgent? "We'll continue this later," he told the people in the meeting. They gathered their papers and left quickly. When the room was empty except for Sarah, Michael picked up the phone. "This is President Montgomery." Sarah watched as Michael's face changed while he listened. First confusion, then shock, and finally something she had never seen before on the president's face. Raw fear. "Is he alive?" Michael asked, his voice tight. "How bad are his injuries?" He listened for a long moment, then said, "I'm coming there now. Have your best doctors ready. And keep this quiet until I arrive." Michael put down the phone and stared at the wall. "Sir," Sarah asked, "what's happened?" "My father," Michael said softly. "They found my father in Riverdale. He's homeless. Has been for years, apparently." Sarah looked confused. "Your father? But I thought that he was dead." "No. He left after my mother died. 15 years ago. We had a terrible fight. He was drinking heavily, destroying himself with grief. I tried to help, but he refused, said terrible things. The next day, he was gone." Michael's voice broke slightly. "I looked for him for years, even used some government resources after I became a senator. But he didn't want to be found." "And now?" Sarah asked. "Now he's in critical condition at Riverdale General Hospital," Michael said, standing up. "A police officer attacked him in the park this morning. Hit him with steel knuckles. My father's skull is fractured. He might not survive." Sarah gasped. "Oh my God." "Get Marine One ready," Michael ordered, referring to the presidential helicopter. "I need to be in Riverdale as soon as possible." "Sir, there are protocols," Sarah reminded him. "Security assessments, advance teams." "I don't care about protocols," Michael shouted, then immediately looked sorry. "My father is dying, Sarah. I haven't seen him in 15 years. I need to be there." Secret Service agents were already entering the office, having heard the president raise his voice. Robert Jackson, the head of the president's security detail, approached cautiously. "Mr. President, we've been informed of the situation. We strongly advise against rushing to Riverdale without proper preparation." Michael looked at him with such intensity that Robert took a step back. "My father has been living on the streets while I've been living in the White House. Now he might die before I can tell him I'm sorry. I am going to Riverdale today. You can either help me get there safely or get out of my way." The room fell silent. Then Robert nodded. "Yes, sir. We'll have Marine One ready in 15 minutes. I'll send an advance team immediately." As the room burst into activity, Michael went to his private office and closed the door. He opened his desk drawer and took out an old photo. It showed a younger version of himself with his parents. His father, Robert Montgomery, had his arm around Michael's shoulders. They were both smiling. Michael touched his father's face in the photo. Tears filled his eyes as he wondered what his father looked like now. After years on the streets, he wondered if he would even recognize him. Most of all, He wondered if his father would live long enough for Michael to say the words he had wanted to say for 15 years. I forgive you. The sound of helicopter blades began to whir outside. It was time to go. Morning light filtered through the hospital window. President Michael Montgomery had fallen asleep in the chair beside his father's bed. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose around his neck. He hadn't left the room all night. The door opened quietly as Sarah entered with a cup of coffee. "Sir," she said softly, "you should see this." She handed him her tablet. On the screen was the morning news. Every channel showed the same story. President's homeless FOITher BRUTALLY by police officer. Pictures of Robert Montgomery filled the screen. Old photos from his engineering days, side by side with blurry images taken by people in the park yesterday. Michael rubbed his tired eyes. "It's everywhere, isn't it?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. "People are shocked. There are protests forming outside the Riverdale Police Department. Social media is exploding with the story." Michael looked at his still unconscious father. "What are they saying?" "Some are focusing on the police brutality angle. Others are asking why the president's father was homeless. Opposition politicians are suggesting you abandoned him." Sarah paused. "But many people are sharing stories about their own estranged family members, about homelessness, about mental health struggles. This is starting important conversations." Michael nodded slowly. His personal family tragedy was now a national talking point. It felt strange, but maybe some good could come from it. A soft groan from the bed caught their attention. Robert's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. "Dad?" Michael moved closer. "Dad, can you hear me?" Robert's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. He blinked several times, trying to understand where he was. The machines beside him beeped faster as his heart rate increased. "I'll get the doctor," Sarah said, hurrying from the room. Robert's eyes finally settled on Michael's face. There was confusion, then a flash of recognition. "Michael?" His voice was a dry whisper, barely audible. "Yes, Dad. It's me." Michael fought to keep his voice steady. "You're in the hospital. You're safe now." Robert stared at his son for a long moment. His eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd see you again," he said weakly. "I've been looking for you, Dad, for years." Dr. Patel rushed into the room with two nurses. "Mr. Montgomery, good to see you awake. I need to check your condition." While the medical team examined Robert, Michael stepped back. His heart pounded in his chest. His father recognized him. His father was awake, talking. The relief was overwhelming. After a few minutes, Dr. Patel turned to Michael. "This is very promising. He's more alert than we expected. His responses are good, but he needs rest. Try to keep the conversation brief and calm." When they were alone again, Robert spoke first. "You look like your mother," he said softly. Michael smiled. "You always said that. You're the president now." It wasn't a question. "I saw you. On TV sometimes." "Yes," Michael replied. "For 3 years now. I'm proud of you." Robert's voice broke. "So proud. But I couldn't. I was ashamed. Look what I became." "Dad, what happened? Why did you stay away so long?" Robert closed his eyes for a moment. "After your mother died, I fell apart. The drinking got worse after our fight. I lost my job, my home. Before I knew it, I was on the streets. By then, I was too ashamed to contact you. What would people think if they knew the president's father was a homeless drunk? I wouldn't have cared what people thought." Michael said, "You're my father. I watched your career from a distance. Senator, then president. I was so proud, but felt I had no right to be in your life. I would have ruined everything for you." "That's not true," Michael insisted. "We could have gotten you help." A tear slid down Robert's bruised cheek. "I'm sorry, son. For everything. For leaving. For the things I said before I left." Michael gently squeezed his father's hand. I'm sorry too. I should have tried harder to find you. The police officer, Robert said suddenly, remembering. He was so angry. He's been arrested, Michael assured him. He won't hurt anyone else. Robert looked surprised. Because of who you are. If I was just another homeless man, nothing would have happened to him. Michael nodded slowly. His father was right. The bitter truth hung in the air between them. Things need to change, Michael said firmly. And maybe this is where it starts. Robert studied his son's face. You always wanted to fix the world's problems. Even as a little boy. I learned from you, Dad. Before everything happened. Robert gave a weak smile. Maybe it's not too late to try again. Father and son. It's not too late, Michael promised, holding his father's hand tightly. We're getting a second chance. I understand you'd like me to rewrite part one of the story individually with approximately 650 words, using simple and basic English in third-person style. You want it to be interesting and without special punctuation marks like asterisks or hashtags. Here's part one. Officer James Wilson woke up in a bad mood. The sun was just coming up, but he had been awake for hours. His small house felt empty now. His wife had left him 2 weeks ago. She took most of their things and even the dog. James looked at the empty side of the bed where she used to sleep. He got up slowly and walked to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked tired and angry. Dark circles under his eyes showed he had not slept well again. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the anger, but it did not work. James put on his blue police uniform carefully. Each button, each crease had to be perfect. Being a police officer was the one thing he was still proud of. He pinned his badge to his chest and looked at himself again. Better, but still not right. Before leaving, James opened his drawer and took out something he was not supposed to have. Steel knuckles. The metal felt cold and heavy in his hand. He was not allowed to carry them as a police officer, but lately, they'd made him feel powerful when everything else in his life felt out of control. He slipped them into his pocket. The drive to the Riverdale police station was short. The town was small, usually quiet. James had grown up here, knew almost everyone. But lately, things were changing. More strangers were showing up, more problems. The mayor was always talking about keeping Riverdale clean and attractive for tourists and business. At the morning meeting, Chief Parker reminded everyone about the summer festival coming up next month. The mayor wants the park cleaned up before visitors arrive, he said, looking directly at James. Those homeless people sleeping on benches are bad for business. Handle it. James nodded. He knew what handle it meant. Make them go away, one way or another. Don't make a show, but get results. The chief did not care how. After the meeting, James drove his police car to the park. It was a beautiful spring day. Flowers were blooming and birds were singing. Families should be enjoying this park, James thought, not dirty homeless people scaring everyone away. He spotted an old man sleeping on a bench near the duck pond. The man was covered with a dirty blanket, a small bag of belongings under the bench. This was exactly what the mayor was complaining about. James parked his car and walked over, his hand touching the steel knuckles in his pocket. Hey, James said loudly. Wake up. You can't sleep here. The old man slowly opened his eyes. He looked around, confused for a moment, then saw the police uniform. His face changed from confusion to fear. He sat up quickly. I'm sorry, officer, the old man said in a weak voice. I was just resting. This isn't a hotel, James said. Pack up your things and move along. The old man nodded. His hand shook as he started to fold his blanket. He moved slowly, too slowly for James's liking. James felt his anger rising. Why did these people have to make everything difficult? I'm going, officer, the old man said quietly. Just give me a minute. Something about the man's calm voice made James even angrier. He did not want to give him a minute. He wanted him gone now. His hand closed around the steel knuckles in his pocket. James did not know that this moment would change many lives forever. He did not know that the old man had once been someone important. He did not know that the man's son now sat in the White House. James only knew his own anger and the weight of the medal in his hand. As the morning sun shined down on Riverdale Park, Officer James Wilson was about to make the biggest mistake of his life.